All right, I think we are live. If my internet is fast enough, I don't know. My internet's pretty slow here. I'm at a sketchy Airbnb, getting ready to go to the airport, and I just saw the reports that drones from Russia have crossed the border into Poland, and Polish air forces, as well as NATO assets, are being scrambled to shoot them down. The Russian Ministry of Defense made a statement that says, from today, no one is immune from our actions. Everyone who supports Ukraine and Zelensky will pay the price. So it looks like Russia has escalated, and this is big, folks. This is huge because uh, this is a NATO country. Poland is a NATO country. And so the leaders of NATO, have been called to an emergency meeting. They are, as I said, scrambling, refueling aircraft and fighter jets and things to the region. Moldova apparently also is under attack. They say they're conflicting reports. One report I saw says that 95 Russian drones have gone into Polish airspace. Now, this isn't the first time that Russian missiles or drones have struck in Poland. There have been at least three times that I know of during this war that have where that's happened, but they've all been accidental falls from these missiles or drones. Russia was aiming at something that was right on the border, very close to the border, and the drones just strayed into Polish airspace. There was one case where a farmer or somebody was killed. Several people, I think, were killed, like four people. And there was some confusion as to whether or not the missile that landed in Poland had actually been from Ukraine or from Russia, because Ukraine is shooting anti-missile missiles at Russian missiles, and the pieces and parts, uh, might fall down into Poland, but they were just across the border. This is different. Well, again, we're just getting reports of this. I was getting ready to go to bed and try to get a couple hours of sleep before I had to go to the airport when I saw this come across, and I went, oh no. And now we're talking about something very, very different than what we've seen before. There is video coming out of drones that have crashed inside Poland with flames. So things are burning. And I mean, what we're talking about here is not exactly, well, I mean, it's certainly an escalation. And we'll have to see what NATO uh, decides to do about this. But let me just tell you from my own experience, Poland is not playing around. They've been building up their forces for the entirety of this war. The militant uh, feeling in Poland when I'm there is very high. It's guys that are walking around in uniform are, it's a very, very patriotic feeling. And Poland has been building up its armed forces at a faster rate than other NATO countries, expecting something like this to happen at some point. Now, we don't have word yet on uh, any casualties or how many drones. One of the other reports I saw said that it was only three drones that strayed into Poland. This map here, what I do with my map? No, not that one. Not that one. This is all from previous. I don't know what I did with it. Oh, there it is. That map. So the Polish border is right there in the middle, you see, and this shows several, well, see, two drones inside Poland and two more that are almost in Poland, heading toward Poland, and more drones that are in the area, in the border region. That's not 95 drones, so I'm not sure where that comes from, but the airport in Warsaw Chopin Airport, has been closed due to, quote, unplanned military activity. Now, the U.S. is not flying a lot of stuff into Warsaw. Most of the stuff that is going to Ukraine from NATO countries, the United States and others, is being flown into a place called Shesho. And if I can show you on the map there, let me see if I can show you on the map where Shesho is. Um, let's see, where's my map? There it is. Okay. Szeszo, Poland. All right, let's go to the map. Hello. There we go. Uh, okay, so Szeszo, Poland. I got to zoom out here. We'll get rid of that. And you can see that it's fairly close to the border. There's the border here with Ukraine. There's Lviv in Ukraine. That's the easternmost big city in Ukraine. And Warsaw is way up here. So Warsaw, uh, all the way up here. For the entirety of the war, most of the aid and military hardware and stuff has been flowing into Ukraine through Poland, uh, and a lot of it goes through Szeszo here. There are a bunch of U.S. troops stationed at Szeszo, and we have Patriot missile batteries there, all around the airfield, just in case something like this were to happen. And we've been pumping weapons down this highway. If you go from Szeszo and you go down this main highway here, it goes right into Ukraine and right to Lviv and then on to Kiev. When I go to Ukraine, I usually fly into Szeszo and then take a taxi to Przemysl down here. And then from there, I take an overnight train, very slow train in Ukraine that crosses the border and goes all the way over here to Kiev. Okay. So if it's true, we right now, the information we're getting about the strike on Poland is preemptory at best. We don't know exactly all the details, and so you have to kind of be careful. Take things with a grain of salt a little bit uh, as we go through this. But if Russia has decided now to start striking NATO countries, then NATO has all the excuse it ever needed to go to the assistance of Ukraine in a much bigger way, like putting troops on the ground in Ukraine, or even going so far as to strike Russia directly. Now, it also says that some of these drones came from Belarus. Extensive movement of suicide drones from Belarus towards the capital of Poland. And the highest alert status has been declared in Slovakia and Hungary. Hungary probably doesn't have much to worry about because Hungary has been friends with Russia, and it's likely that Russia wouldn't strike Hungary. But very, very, very big development right here. Now, Russia has been waging asymmetric warfare against Ukraine and against the West ever since the war began and even before. And so, with that in mind, this is an escalation, but it's not Russia starting a war against the West because they've already been fighting a war against the West. As a matter of fact, German forces just today detained a cargo ship on suspicion of espionage by Russia and possible sabotage after an operation in what's called the Kiel Canal, according to Der Spiegel. That happened last night. Special police units in Germany boarded a 75-meter ship September 7th and carried out a search that lasted into the following day. The operation was part of an ongoing investigation into suspected intelligence gathering activities that threatened Germany's critical maritime infrastructure, as reported by Der Spiegel. What they're saying is that this cargo ship was a suspected launch pad for Russian spy drones against Germany. And we've seen Russian drones, these small spy drones that have been sighted. Up until now, I don't think any of them have been shot down or captured, but sighted at least and suspected to be from Russia in many European countries, including Great Britain. So it looks like this sort of Cold War, the asymmetric war that Russia's been fighting, not exactly cold, but it just got a whole lot hotter. And so, what do we expect to happen? Uh, well, first of all, Poland is going to close its borders with Belarus for sure, and is going to mobilize its forces. And then, Article 5 of the NATO Charter says that an attack on one NATO country is attack on all NATO countries. That being the case, we could see Poland request Article 5 support by the rest of NATO, and the United States, as well as all the other NATO countries, would be obligated to jump in on the side of Poland to do something. Now, if these are just drone strikes, and I say just, I mean, if the drone strikes are bad enough and people die from those, whatever, but if they're just drone strikes, then according to the generally accepted practice of reciprocal uh, proportional response, then Poland might just up its support for Ukraine and let them send a few more drones into Russia. I think the reason that Russia is doing this right now is because what we're seeing is Russia is uh, economically really on the ropes. They're worse off than people realize. Now, I know things are bad in Ukraine as well. I just heard from a guy on the front lines of the fight, and he's been there for a couple of years now. He's inside of Ukraine, and we correspond via WhatsApp. And he sent me a report with the FPV drones, a wide, so they're not jammable. Lines with so many of those things. So civilians, military, doesn't matter. And what it does is it makes it almost impossible to move uh, troops and move wounded is where they get picked off by these drones. And the drones now can go up to 40 kilometers with the fiber optic lines. So 40 kilometers will let them reach Kramatorsk. And if we look on the map here again, pull up Kramatorsk. Where did my map go? Okay, so let's go to Kramatorsk is in the Donetsk Oblast, and it's part of Donetsk that Ukraine still controls. So there's Kramatorsk, and you can see how close it is to Luhansk and to the Russian border. That's this black line here. That's the Russian border. Now, if we go to, we can go to Live UA map, where I'm doing this on the fly, as you can see. And I don't have a super fast internet connection. So interesting. Lutsk. Where's Lutsk? Let's see where Lutsk is. That's way out in the west of Ukraine, around Lviv, I guess. Where's Lviv? So some of those drones that's north of Lviv, some of those drones must have struck over in this area because according to live UA map, there were explosions reported in Lutsk. But if we look here at this map, whoa, hello. Let's zoom in a little slower here. Let it load. Man, I hate all these ads. We'll let that load for a minute. See if it'll bring up. There we go. It's starting to come up with a map. Okay, so Kramatorsk is, there's Sloviansk. Kramatorsk is right here. And this front line has steadily been marching closer and closer to Kramatorsk, and now it's within striking distance. So Kramatorsk, since the beginning of the war, has been kind of the central hub for the central part of the front lines, where they push all the supplies and everything. And then from there are roads that go north, east, and south. And all of those roads are major supply lines for the Ukrainian army. I guess now the Russian army is getting close enough that they're able to strike in Kramatorsk with more than just missiles, because they don't have that many missiles. They've been hitting Kramatorsk with missiles since the beginning of the war, but a lot of the people in Kramatorsk that are civilians still haven't left. It's like they don't care. They're like, it's fine. I've been in Kramatorsk a lot, and actually one of the hotels that I stayed in Kramatorsk was hit by a missile. Fortunately, not when I was there, but and it killed a couple of journalists that were staying at that hotel at the time. So whenever I go to Kramatorsk now, I stay in private homes rather than in any of the hotels and hope for the best. But it looks like Kramatorsk is getting to the point where if you drive around the city, you could get struck by a Russian FPV drone. And so things are getting tough for the Ukrainians on that front line. They have that fortress belt, they call it, that they have created along these front lines. That fortress belt is a series of fortifications that were built ahead of time. They've been building them for a couple of years now, with the stated goal. I mean, the plan was that Russia is going to try to grind us down on these front lines, and they're going to make very incremental gains, but we're going to make it so costly for Russia that they can't keep it up forever. And that's still the plan. And it is working to a great extent, but it's really hard on the troops on the front line because they can't get out and get back in. So the guys that are in there on the front lines are staying there and not getting rotated out, because it's the rotation that is likely to get you killed because of the FPV drones. So let's take a look here at Zamosc, Poland, Zamosc. Zamosc, Poland is where they say that Russian drones hit, and that led NATO to scramble jets and increase air defense readiness. And the Russians, rather than saying, whoops, that was a mistake, are saying, no country that assists Ukraine will be safe from our strikes. And I mean, that is escalatory rhetoric if ever I heard it. That's a big deal. Huge, huge. So, I mean, I'm just reporting this stuff as it comes in here. And I'm trying to give you some of my, sort of context from the time that I've spent. It might be time to head back to Ukraine as soon as I can, but that won't be for several weeks before I can get back over there. So James Simmons says, if this is correct, why would this not be in Article 5? Well, see, Article 5 isn't automatically triggered if a NATO country goes to war, if a NATO country gets attacked. Article 5 says that if a NATO country gets attacked and they request assistance from NATO, NATO must come to their aid. And the NATO countries actually have some leeway too in how much aid they give, whether they give any at all. Because so all day says, did Russia hit Poland? No, Russia, from what we can tell here, Russia did not hit, I'm sorry, Russia did hit Poland. Poland did not hit Russia. Okay. So, folks, we've got 3,600 people online, and do me a favor, go hit that like button. Know that you need reminders from time to time. I always forget too. So go hit that like button. Make sure that you're subscribed to the podcast, because this is the third live that I've done today. Wasn't planning on doing 3 lives today, but it just worked out that way. Sometimes when it rains, it pours. We go weeks and weeks with no major breaking news, and now we got lots of breaking news all over the place. Jake says, "Is this World War III?" Well, if you've been listening to me for any amount of time, you know that I have been saying that we are in World War III, and we have been since at least 2022. You know, World War II was not called World War II during World War II. It was only after World War II was over and the history books were written that it was given that name. And that's going to be the same with World War III. World War III will not look like World War II with a bunch of conventional forces fighting each other, because we have these drones and you know, there's proxy wars, and too many of the players in the world are nuclear powers now. And if they're nuclear powers, they really cannot fight each other, because if it's a fight to the death, your very last resort is going to be to use nukes, and then everybody will end up using nukes, and it'll get real bad really fast. I'm talking about extinction level event really fast if nukes start getting used. Uh, and now there's reports from Sean Z that we just struck another drug boat. Fantastic. uh, Amir Tsarfati just reported that Russia attacked a NATO missile warehouse with their suicide UAVs inside Poland. Now, we're going to have to wait and see what Poland's response is to this. I mean, Poland, of all countries in NATO, is probably one of the most militant, and they would be most likely to say, oh yeah, okay, we're going to send troops into Poland, or we're going to start firing our missiles at Russia. Uh, and of course, backed up by NATO, that could be that we could be looking at a major, major escalation right now. Uh, so I don't think that we're on our way to nuclear conflict just yet. And Russia knows that if they use a nuke, that nukes will be used against them, and everybody loses. Everybody loses is not an outcome that anybody wants. And with that being the case, Russia probably won't use nukes. However, if NATO were to get fully involved in this conflict and actually put troops into Ukraine, this war would be, because NATO has a tremendous amount of combat power. NATO represents about 60% of all of the combat power on planet Earth. Now, Russia has its own version of NATO, and it's called, you know, it's not the BRICS. That's a economic, uh, you know, conglomeration. Russia's version of NATO, and the CSTO is made up of a bunch of former Russian countries. Somebody says audio gone. You might want to restart the live, back out and come back in the live if you lost audio. Uh, so we'll just have to wait and see how bad the damage is, and see what Poland decides they want to do. Poland may just say, we are going to respond directly to Russia and not invoke Article 5. Or they might invoke Article 5. And if they do, like I say, NATO is going to hurt this, end this very quickly. And then we have to worry about Russia getting to the point where where Putin just cannot afford to lose. And so, pushing him to the point where he just says, we're just going to do the nuclear option and everybody's going to lose. I I really like to believe that Putin is crazy and psychopathic, but not stupid, and that it would be stupid for him to use a nuke because, again, Russia would be destroyed if that were the case. But I mean, maybe I'm giving him too much credit. Maybe he is crazy and stupid. And maybe he's just so sick in the head that he's like, if we can't win, nobody can win, and everybody will lose, because he's shown that he doesn't really care about his people. He doesn't mind losing millions of Russians. That doesn't bother him at all. He doesn't lose an ounce of sleep that more than 1 million Russians have become casualties of this war already. 1 million people. I mean, that's a very large city. That's huge. So, we're just, wow, this is amazing. So if Russia attacked a missile warehouse, Russia's, justification is, oh, well, those missiles are being used in Ukraine. The thing that's hurting Russia the most are the deep strikes into Russia that Ukraine is doing every day now with drones and missiles that are taking out energy infrastructure. Ukraine has been focusing on several things: air defenses, bombers, and air assets, things like that, that are the very items that are carrying bombs and releasing them into Ukraine. So they've been focusing on those things, but mostly they've been focusing on the petroleum industry in Russia, blowing up every transfer station, every storage facility, every fuel train, everything that they can find. And that is really having an effect on Russia. It's getting almost impossible to find gasoline in places like Crimea. Crimea is being choked off, not by Ukraine, not just in terms of fuel, but also in terms of water, because the water that feeds Crimea comes out of the Dnieper River uh, down near Kherson. And right now, Ukraine is in control of that canal, and they've filled it full of concrete. Like, no water going to Crimea. So Crimea has been in a perpetual state of drought because their reservoirs are going dry. And that's where Russia's main, or really only, warm water naval base is located, at Sevastopol. So things are coming to a head in Russia and in Ukraine. And it's just a race to see who can hold out the longest. The Ukrainians, I think, will win that battle because they have to. The Ukrainians are, we're talking about survival for them. If the Ukrainians stop fighting, then Ukraine disappears. Ukraine ceases to exist. And the Ukrainian people will likely cease to exist, because it's not like Russia's just going to let bygones be bygones. If Ukraine gives up tomorrow and Russia takes over the country, then Russian soldiers are going to continue to kill Ukrainians in the areas that they control. How do we know that? Because we've seen what the Russians have done in the areas that they control now. They've been absolutely brutal with the Ukrainians, and that there's no evidence whatsoever that would change if Ukraine gave up right now. Okay. Peter S. says, guys, it didn't happen. There's no word of this in Poland. Well, it is all over the media and there's video to boot. So it could be a hoax, I suppose. But if it's a hoax, then why did the Russian ministry release a statement saying what they did? Their statement says, the Russian Defense Ministry says, as of today, no one is immune. Anyone supporting the Zelensky regime will pay the price. Why did Russia put that out if this is fake, if it didn't happen? Okay. So yeah, this is big. Now I see I'm trying to get these questions as they come by. Nicholas Dupree says, how will Trump get any sleep lately with everything going on? He must be in the situation room a lot. Yeah, I bet. I bet he is. Angel says, do you think that Ukraine sent the drones to Poland to pull other countries in? Now, there's going to be conspiracy theories that say that, but they're pretty easily debunked when you look at the drones themselves, because the drones are Russian uh, Shahed drones. Those drones are not made in Ukraine. The parts came from Russia. Uh, it would be uh, very easy for American and NATO radar to track where those drones took off from, because we've got surveillance aircraft hovering, doing circles over the border with Ukraine 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And uh, so if they were fired from inside Ukraine, we would know it. The Ukrainians couldn't pull that off and make it look like they came out of Russia. So, and again, if that were the case, then Russia would be saying, no, that was Ukraine that did that. We didn't do that. But Russia's not saying that. What Russia is saying right now is, from now on, we're going to strike anywhere that there's a, that people are supporting Ukraine. Folks, thank you for watching. We got 7,000 people online. Do me a favor and hit the like button. That makes a big difference. We weren't able to schedule this live ahead of time because we just went live and just like right off the bat. And so it helps to get the word out that we're live if you hit that like button. So please do that. And also, if you want to follow more of my reporting, go to chuckholton.com. Chuckholton.com is where I put a lot of extra content that I can't put on YouTube. We put written summaries of each live up there on a daily basis. We put other media that I'm doing with CBN and Newsmax and other agencies around the globe. And so if you want to follow all my reporting and you want to support my reporting, you can go to chuckholton.com and sign up there for, like today with this live. When I schedule live, it's not going to send a notification to most people because we only get 3 notifications a day, and we've already put out 3 videos today. So they won't send out another notification. So it's only from you hitting the like button, sharing it, talking in the chat that gets the algorithm of YouTube to show this to a lot more people. And so that's what's happening. Repent, final call before it's too late. Okay, so yeah, I mean, from what we can tell right now, just to recap, Russia fired a swarm of drones across Ukraine. Some of those drones went into Poland and actually blew up. They not that they were accidentally, just overflew their targets in Ukraine and accidentally flew into Poland. No, they targeted a missile facility in Poland where missiles were being made and sent into Ukraine. And Russia is testing NATO's resolve. So they realize NATO looks so weak when they do this proportional response bit. Oh, well, you blow up one of ours, we're going to blow up one of yours. When you blow up one of ours, we're going to blow up one of yours. That sort of thing. Uh, okay, Alexa, I'm going to have to ask you to stop that. You're just spamming the. Look, I get it. We want people to repent. We want people to come to Jesus. We're not talking about that right this minute. Okay. So you're just distracting with over and over and over again posting that same thing. And we're going to put you in timeout if you keep it up. Question: can you theorize in the goals of this incident? Would Putin really waste his element of surprise against NATO on this? Well, this is an element of surprise. Um, Putin is gauging the response. What he's betting is that the leaders of NATO are too much weenies to actually stand up and do something major. Now, and really, what are they going to do? Is NATO going to fly F-35s into Russia and strike Russian airfields? Highly doubtful. NATO, I'll tell you right now, the response to this will not include NATO striking Russia. That's highly unlikely, very highly unlikely. Okay. Uh, what we are more likely to see is NATO just ramping up its support for Ukraine. I think NATO so far has been pretty happy with the arrangement here, which is that, we send money and our old, obsolete military equipment to Ukraine, and then Ukrainian men do all the fighting and dying for NATO to degrade Russia. I think NATO's been pretty happy with that. But what Putin is betting on is that the leadership of NATO is they're too much of weenies to actually go hard against Russia. We'll have to see what happens. In a quick response, Amir, I'm just looking at Amir's page here. In a quick response, NATO country representatives decided to send many fighter jets from several other countries across Europe to the Russia-Poland border in preparation for a response. Okay, well, you notice that they're not flying NATO jets into Ukraine. That would be a response. If we close the sky over Ukraine, and we start flying combat air patrols over Ukraine and blowing anything out of the sky that comes flying into Ukraine, whether it's a drone, a bomb, a missile, or an airplane, that would be a response. That's not the response that we'll likely get. The response we'll likely get is going to be much more measured, which is going to only embolden Vladimir Putin. That measured response will likely be, well, we're going to patrol the skies over Poland to make sure this doesn't happen again. Okay. And Russia's like, yeah, okay. So we win that round. No question. Am I still connected? My internet here is pretty slow. So I'm sorry if it's lagging a little bit. There's nothing I can do about it. I got slow internet here. Corey says, why say they attacked when they didn't? Russia did attack, Corey. Uh, Russia attacked a missile production facility or storage facility in Poland, from what we understand right now. Friendly Evangelist says we cannot be flying combat aircraft in Ukraine. Why not? What happens if we do that? If we call Putin's bluff and we start flying combat air patrols in Ukraine and start striking at any targets that happen to present themselves that are in Ukrainian territory. And we don't necessarily go as far as striking into Russia proper, but anything in the Donbass region is fair game. We could annihilate Russian forces in very short order. Okay, now it wouldn't be without risk, it wouldn't be without cost, but Russia would not stand up to the full weight of NATO if we decided to go hard. But we're not going to. Okay. Now, everybody, these guys are saying Russia did not attack. It's a false flag. You don't know that. Uh, I'm hearing from people in Ukraine that this is actually happening. So we'll just have to wait and see. We have to wait and see what happens. Republican Congressman Joe Wilson released a statement that said Russia is attacking NATO ally Poland with Iranian Shahed drones less than a week after President Trump hosted President Naraki at the White House. President Naraki is the new president of Poland. And only a few weeks after Vladimir Putin himself came to meet with President Trump. This is an act of war, and we're grateful to NATO allies for their swift response to war criminal Putin's continued unprovoked aggression against free and productive nations. I urge President Trump to respond with mandatory sanctions that will bankrupt the Russian war machine and arm Ukraine with weapons capable of striking Russia. Putin is no longer content just losing in Ukraine while bombing mothers and babies. He's now directly testing our resolve in NATO territory. Putin stated that Russia knows no borders. Free and prosperous nations will teach Russia about borders. So Poland has now closed its airspace over Warsaw. And I just want you to see, we'll go back to the map here. I want you to see how far inland Warsaw actually is. It's not right on the border, right? So we'll close this here. So here's Warsaw. Now, I've flown into Warsaw many times and then driven from Warsaw to the border, or what I did last time, not last trip before last, is I flew into Warsaw. I took a taxi down to Lukow, I think, and then I picked up a rental car and we drove from there across the border into Lviv. Okay. But it's a good 2 hours or more from the border to driving from the Ukrainian border to Warsaw. But what I want to point out here is that Poland also has a border not just with Belarus, which is now completely closed, but also with Russia, the Russian territory of Kaliningrad, right here. Okay, Kaliningrad is a Russian exclave. It is owned and controlled by Russia, but you can see it is surrounded by NATO countries. Lithuania and Poland completely surround Kaliningrad. They are cut off, and we could easily completely cut off Kaliningrad, blockade it so that no supplies can get in there, and we could starve them out if we wanted to. I mean, NATO could totally do that. And so Poland has got some uh, avenues, let's say, for response to Russia that go beyond like sending troops into Ukraine. If some of those drones came out of uh, Belarus, Poland could strike across the border into Belarus. They certainly will move more troops up there to that border. They could also strike across the border into Kaliningrad. So things are getting interesting here, folks, for sure. Fighter jets from Germany, Netherlands, Britain, the United States, and Poland, along with early warning aircraft and aerial refueling tankers, have all responded to defend Polish airspace from Russian drone attacks. So we've got a bunch of fighter jets flying around along the border between Poland and probably Belarus, actually, this border here, shooting down Russian drones as they come across. Okay, that is a defensive, reactive response. What I'm concerned about is, what I want to see is what will Poland's uh, response be when it's their move against Russia. So, boy, we just don't know. Now, uh, Ukraine's Air Force, here's an article out of Reuters, says that Russian drones entered Poland's airspace. Polish and Allied aircraft were activated early on Wednesday to ensure the safety of Poland's airspace after Ukraine's Air Force warned that Russian drones entered NATO member Poland's airspace. This is a quote from Poland's operational command post on X, said, quote, Polish and Allied aircraft are operating in our airspace while ground-based air defense and radar reconnaissance systems have been brought to the highest state of readiness. Earlier, the Ukrainian Air Force said on the Telegram messaging app that drones were headed west and threatening the city of Zamosc in Poland. It wasn't immediately clear how many drones were in Poland's airspace. Ukrainian media reported that at least one drone was heading toward the western city of Rzeszów in Poland. Reuters could not independently verify the reports. So it's interesting to see how all the Russian trolls are coming out of the, okay, yeah, acid needs to go. All the trolls are coming out of the woodwork in the chat here. A lot of these people that are making comments in the chat that you're seeing the moderators delete are likely Russian bots making those comments. And you can tell by looking carefully at the naming conventions they use and the wording of what they're saying. So Katie Johnson says, wait, they struck Poland? Yes, that's what's being reported is Russia struck Poland tonight, or it's actually Wednesday morning over there. But this will be very interesting to see what happens. All right, now I think that's we've pretty much covered it for everything we know at this point. I'm going to go look and see if they've. I don't know if my mods got a chance to actually add questions to the question thing, but I'm going to go answer questions if there are any. Oh yeah, it looks like we've got some. Alta Carpenter Grimes says, will Trump and NATO wait to respond until Poland decides what to do? Probably. I mean, Poland and NATO are not going to respond unilaterally without Poland. They're going to let Poland take the lead on this. John Speed says, can you theorize in the goals of this incident? Would Putin really waste his element of surprise against NATO? We already talked about that. Real Rail Fan says the USA is still in NATO, correct? Yes, we are. Will they act like a lot of European countries did when the Germans invaded Poland at the start of World War II? That remains to be seen. Brian G says, what's your opinion? Is Russia's endgame by doing this? Well, I believe that Russia is, number one, testing the resolve of NATO, but they chose now to do it because Russia is in a bad way economically. Russia can see that at the rate they are losing production capacity for their oil, and at the rate that sanctions, especially more sanctions on Russia, is not going to economically be able to sustain this war much longer. They've got millions of men that Vladimir Putin would have no problem pushing into the meat grinder. That doesn't bother him at all. But paying those men to join the military is where they're having a problem. So I think that Putin is like, all right, we gotta either put a stop to these attacks inside Russia, and since Ukraine is storing most of its materiel, those drones and missiles and stuff, in Western Ukraine or even in Poland, we're just going to strike into Poland, and we're going to basically just dare NATO to try to do something about it. And I would love it if that backfired on Russia, but we'll just have to wait and see. Okay, so as far as acting out of desperation, looking at NATO and thinking these guys stomach to actually go to war with us directly. They just want to let Ukrainians do it. And when it comes to Poland, I think Russia might be wrong on that. And they might find out that Poland uh, is almost rare to go. Question: what would a non-proportional response look like? From Alta Carpenter. Because it seems like proportional responses are pointless. I agree with you. I think proportional responses are pointless. They're a recipe for forever war that goes on forever. This would be, we are closing the airspace in Ukraine. We are no longer going to watch Russia send 800 missiles and drones every night into Ukraine to kill Ukrainian women and children. Because that's all Russia's been doing. It's just striking every night in civilian areas of cities all across the country, trying to break the will of the Ukrainian people. And so a non-proportional response would be NATO saying, all right, that's it. We are sending our planes and we are calling a no-fly zone over Ukraine. We're going to shoot down anything that's in the skies over Ukraine. And if Russia shoots down one of our fighter jets, we're going to have an even bigger problem. That would be a good start right there. Sarah Jones says, question, so is Putin testing his bounds or aiming to get more countries acting against him? See, that's what everybody's asking, what is Russia thinking? Well, if you could get inside the mind of a psychopath, that might mean you're a psychopath too. So we have to just, everything we can say about that is conjecture at this point, right? Um, John Speed says, whoa, closure between Poland and Belarus. That came before this incident. What's your take on that? I never saw any reasoning for the closure. Well, it's not like there's a bunch of places that where you can cross the border between Poland and Belarus. I've been along that border, and it's mostly woods with there's a fence that's not much of a fence, a big chain link fence that demarcates the border. I've been out with the Polish forces. Oh, wait, was it Polish forces or Lithuanian forces? Might have been Lithuanian forces, but it's all in that same area. And it's just massive amounts of forest out there. Belarus has been weaponizing migrants against Western Europe for years by getting flying in people from Iraq and Syria to Minsk, putting them on buses, driving them out to that border with Lithuania or Poland, and then pushing them across that border, saying, there you go, get into Europe that way, and they'll give you money. Of course, once they do that, the European countries, EU, won't push them back into Belarus, and they typically won't even deport them to their home countries. They'll just give them $3,000 a month and a place to live. And so that's been a way that Belarus has been engaging in asymmetric warfare against NATO countries for a long time, years. I mean, I was reporting on that before the war started, I believe. Maybe, yeah, maybe before the war started, maybe right after the war started. And I mean, I've been to Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, go up to Finland. Finland's got a 1,000-mile border with Russia. And Finland's been building up its forces as well. And Russia has been building up forces on the Finnish border. So it would be really bad if we saw attacks on Finland as well as Poland out of this. But so far, I haven't seen any sign of that. Butterfly Express says, could this be a 1-2 punch and China makes the next move? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see if China does something. F14A Mechanic says, I watch Monkey Works a lot. He's showing lots of activity in the Caribbean for a strike in Venezuela. Yep, we've been talking about that here on this show. As a matter of fact, the first live I did today, because I'm in Guyana right now. I'm right next to Venezuela. And I did a whole 1-hour live on that today. So you can go back and watch that if you want to learn more about what's going on down here. Heather says, is any of this connected to the attack on Qatar? I don't think it's directly connected to the attack on Qatar, but it certainly is not going to make Russia kind of take. It's not going to make Russia back off. Most likely, what Israel is doing to Qatar. It's good. Russia and is being shown what peace through strength might look like from the United States and from Israel as well. And let's hope that Pete Hegseth and President Trump have the stones to actually take action against Russia in a serious way that would actually hurt them. We don't have to send troops into Ukraine. We don't even have to send more weapons to Ukraine. The United States only has to continue to depress the price of oil, which President Trump's been doing, and that's great. And they need to impose very heavy sanctions, the heaviest possible sanctions against Russia, and cut Russia off in every way. Again, these secondary sanctions that you put on nations that do business with Russia are very effective. They've been pretty effective. And we could bankrupt Russia before we could help Ukraine defeat Russia on the battlefield. And so that's the tack we should take in confronting Russia. Bob in VA says, do you think Putin's meeting with Xi and Modi had anything to do with it? Wouldn't surprise me if he discussed it with them. And China said, yeah, I don't think they'll do anything. Go ahead and strike them and see what they do. Right now, China's always trying to position itself as the adult in the room, although they're not. But they're all, so I would guarantee you that what we're going to see come out from the Chinese government are some kind of, statement like, we urge all sides to de-escalate and use caution so that, that kind of thing. Just typical diplomatic doublespeak. Michael Gigil said, this is the diversion for a CCP attack on Taiwan. I guess that's a statement, not a question. So we'll just have to wait and see about that. I don't know if you're right about that or not. Now, let's see if there's any last minute breaking news here before we have to go. It's amazing how the breaking news actually comes from X and Telegram now, not from mainstream media. Reports just came out of another drone that's on its way to Poland. I don't know how they decide it's on its way to Poland. If it's traveling across Ukraine, it could be aimed at Ukraine. But if it's coming out of Belarus, then it would be easy to surmise that it's coming toward Poland because there's nothing between Belarus and Poland. So we'll have to wait and see if we get more of that. All right. Just went over an hour, folks, and I've got to get some sleep before I have to get to the airport at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I'm going to end it there. Thank you very much for watching. We will definitely keep our eyes on this, and I will try to go live tomorrow if I can. I'm supposed to be flying almost all day, but maybe late tomorrow afternoon, I might be able to get on and comment on this further. If you have questions that you would like me to answer, send your questions to chuckholton.com. Go sign up at chuckholton.com and send your questions over there, and we will aggregate those questions, and I'll get to those on my next live. Jeffrey says false flag. I don't think so. You're going to hear a lot of this. There's a lot of people who are conservatives in the United States that are very anti-Ukraine still, very pro-Russia, because they've been terribly impacted by Russian propaganda, and they don't know it. They don't believe it is Russian propaganda, but it is. They've been lied to by Russia. And so they're all of a sudden, this attacks their own worldview. If Russia is attacking NATO countries now, they're going to have to try to find a way to make excuses for Russia or just claim that it's a false flag. Oh, that couldn't be. Russia do that. It wouldn't do that. Just like when Russia loses ground in Ukraine, and Ukraine manages to retake ground from Russia, a lot of these same apologists for Russia, like Tucker Carlson and people like that, just say, "Oh well, Russia they just pulled back out of the goodness of their heart. They just decided that they would give that land back to Ukraine, and they voluntarily withdrew." Russia's not voluntarily withdrawing from anything in Ukraine. The only way they're getting pushed out is to actually get killed, for Ukrainians to kill them. Okay, so NMR says I spent a summer in Poland in the 70s. Those uh, Polish people are like the most patriotic Southerners in America. They're like good old boys. I mean, they're real men over there, and they're not afraid to say it. So I really